that doesn't matter to either of us. Leaving the main stream, they passed into what seemed like a landlocked lake. Green turf sloped down to either side, while ahead of them, the silvery shoulder of a weir, arm in arm with a meal wheel that held up in its turn, a grey, garbled mill house, filled the air with a soothing murmur of sound. It was so very beautiful that the mole could only hold up both paws and gasp, "Oh my! Oh my! Oh my! Oh my!" The rat brought the boat alongside the bank, made her fast, helped the mole ashore, and swung out the luncheon basket. The mole begged as a favour to be allowed to unpack it all by himself. The rat was very pleased to indulge him, and to sprawl about on the grass and rest while his excited friend shook out the tablecloth and spread it, took out the mysterious packets one by one, and arranged their contents in due order, still gasping, "Oh my! Oh my!" When all was ready, the rat said, "Pitch in, old fellow," and the mole was very glad to obey, for he started his spring cleaning very early that morning, and had not paused for a bite since. "What are you looking at?" asked the rat presently, when the mole's eyes were able to wander off the tablecloth a little. "I am looking," said the mole, "at a streak of bubbles travelling along the surface of the water." "Bubbles? Oh!" said the rat, and then he chirruped in an inviting sort of way. A broad glistening muzzle showed itself above the bank, and the otter hauled himself out and shook the water from his coat. "Greedy beggars," he observed. "Why didn't you invite me, Ratty?" "Such a rumpus everywhere," he continued. "All the world seems out on the river today. I came up this backwater to get a moment's peace and stumble along you fellows. At least, I beg your pardon, I don't mean that." There was a rustle from behind them, and from a hedge, where last year's leaves still clung thick, a stripy head peered forth. "Come on, old badger, join us!" The badger trotted forward a pace or two, then grunted, "Company," and turned his back and disappeared. "That's just the sort of fellow he is," observed the disappointed rat. "Simply hates society. We shan't see any more of him today." "Well, tell us who's out on the river." "Toad's out for one," replied the otter, "in his brand new wager boat, new togs, new everything." The two animals looked at each other and laughed. "Once it was nothing but sailing," said the rat. "Then he tired of that and took to punting. Last year it was houseboating, and we all had to go with him and pretend we liked it. It's all the same whatever he takes up. He gets tired of it and starts on something fresh. Such a good fellow, too," remarked the otter, "but no stability, especially in a boat." From where they were, they could get a glimpse of the main stream across the island that separated them, and just then a wager boat flashed into view. The rower, a short, stout figure, splashing badly and rolling a good deal, but working his hardest. The rat stood up and hailed him, but the toad, for it was he, shook his head and settled sternly to his work. He'd be out of the boat in a minute if he rose like that. "Of course he will," chuckled the otter. "Did I ever tell you that story?" A mayfly swerved athwart the current. A swirl of water and a gloop, and the mayfly was visible no more. Neither was the otter. Again, there was a streak of bubbles along the surface of the river. "Well, I suppose we ought to be moving on. I wonder which of us had better pack the luncheon basket." "Oh, let me," said the mole. So of course the rat let him. Packing the basket was not quite such pleasant work as unpacking the basket. It never is. But the mole was bent on enjoying everything. And although just when he had got the job done he saw a plate staring up at him from the grass, and then a fork, which anybody ought to have seen, and last of all, the mustard pot. Still, somehow, the thing got finished at last, without much loss of temper. The afternoon sun was getting low, as the rat sculled gently homeward, murmuring poetry things, and not paying much attention to the mole. But the mole was full of lunch, and self-satisfaction, and pride, and already quite at home in a boat, so he thought. And presently he said, "Ratty, please, I want to row." The rat shook his head with a smile. "Not yet. Wait until you've had a few lessons. It's not so easy as it looks." The mole began to feel more and more jealous of Rat. Sculling so strongly and easily along, his pride began to whisper to him that he could do it every bit as well, if not better. And after a minute or two, he suddenly jumped up and seized the sculls. The rat, who was gazing out over the water, was taken by surprise. He fell backwards off his seat with his legs in the air for the second time, while the triumphant mole took his place. "Stop it, you silly ass!" cried the rat from the bottom of the boat. "You'll have us over!" The mole flung his sculls back with a flourish and made a great dig at the water. He missed the surface altogether. His legs flew up above his head, and he found himself lying on top of the rat. He made a grab at the side of the boat, and the next moment, sploosh! Over went the boat, and he felt himself struggling in the water. Oh my, how cold the water was, and oh, how very wet it felt. How it sang in his ears as he went down, down, down. How bright and welcome the sun looked as he rose to the surface. How black was his despair as he found himself sinking again. Then a firm paw gripped him by the back of his neck. It was the rat, and he was laughing. The mole could feel him laughing, right through down his arm, through his paw, and into the back of the mole's neck. The rat got hold of a scull and shoved it under the mole's arm. He did the same by the other side of him, and swimming behind, propelled him to shore. The mole sat on the bank, a squishy lump of misery. When the rat had rubbed him down a bit and wrung some of the water out of him, he said, "Now then, old fellow, trot up and down the towing path until you're dry, while I dive for the lunch basket." So the dismal mole, wet without and ashamed within, trotted about while the rat plunged into the water again, righted the boat, fetched his property, and finally dived for the luncheon basket. When all was ready, the mole, limp and dejected, took his seat in the stern of the boat. "Ratty," he said as they set off, in a voice broken with emotion, I'm very sorry. I've been a complete ass, and I know it. To think that I might have lost that beautiful luncheon basket. Oh, will you overlook it just this once?